This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.
We divert slightly and we're talking about the Tilawa 80th commemoration. Now, the 80th anniversary of the ill-fated passenger ship, cargo ship, S.S Tilawa during the Second World War in November 1942. The Tilawa left Ballard Pier, Bombay, with 222 crew members, 4 gunners and 732 passengers. On November the 23rd, however, in the middle of the Indian Ocean and 930 miles northeast of the Seychelles, the Japanese Imperial Navy I-29 submarine twice torpedoed the Tilawa. Sadly, 280 people lost their lives and 678 people were eventually rescued by the HMS Birmingham and the SS Carthage and brought back to Bombay. On the line with us, we welcome the founders of the South Africa Tilawa Foundation, Emil Solanki, Ashraf Romani and Harun Ta Muhammad. Ashraf Romani, welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Myself, Harun Ta Muhammad, and Imran Bobat, we started a foundation called the S.S Tilawa Foundation some 20 odd years ago. Emil Solanki has also started a website together with his dad. We were not aware of each other. And later on, I'll ask Emil to.
Okay, so we'll talk about that
spend
later.
Some time explaining to you his efforts as well. Yes,
so we'll
Emil is quite instrumental in setting up the commemoration that's happening in Mumbai, and that's why I've asked that we invite Emil.
Okay, so then that's absolutely fine. So then, Emil, welcome.
Hi, hello there. It's Emil Solanki here. Good afternoon from Mumbai, India.
Oh, you joining us all the way from Mumbai. No, so welcome, and we're very interested. I'm sure, like myself, many of our listeners, we are a bit hazy on the details of the story of the Tilawa, and we're looking forward to hearing a lot more about what's happening that side. And so, of course, you will later on then link for us as how you linked up with the founders of the South African Tilawa Foundation. Ashraf, perhaps you want to open up the discussion for us to tell us a bit more about this Tilawa commemoration.
Okay, very brief history. On the early hours of the morning of the 23rd of November 1942, a Japanese torpedo ship torpedoed the S.S Tilawa twice within an hour. They fired the first torpedo around about 1 o'clock, and at about 2 o'clock the second torpedo. A lot of speculation as to why the Tilawa itself was torpedoed and why the Japanese would cripple her and wait 1 hour and then deliver the coup de grace. So there's a lot of mystery about why the Tilawa was targeted and the manner in which the ship was sunk. After all, she was registered as a passenger liner, and it should not have been fair game in the war effort. As a result of that tragedy, 280 passengers perished on board that ship, including my maternal grandparents and my aunt. And only 678 passengers survived. And those who survived for a long time, even the oldest remaining survivor, who we've spoken to in Ohio just 2 days ago. She's 90, by the way. Even she has painful memories, which she doesn't easily wish to talk about. You often have to prize the information from them, because this is such a painful story. If I can quote the late Mr. Halim, whose article is on our website, he said on that particular night, to quote his exact words, he says, "The doors of hell opened for him." So that gives you perspective as to what both those who perished and especially those who survived went through on that fateful night or morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some further developments that has happened, and maybe in the course of the show I'll share with you. I mean, there's been a big legal dispute ongoing between the South African government and the salvages of the 60 tons of silver bullion. But I can share more detail with you later.
Yes. So before we then get into that, and it sounds I mean, both, as you pointed out, incredibly traumatic for those that were on board the ship at the particular time. But it also sounds quite fascinating, the details associated with this. And of course, it hasn't gotten then clearly the degree of airtime that it should have, given the fact that it involved so many people. So before we get to that, and I also maybe just by way of an introduction, to also just sketch to us as briefly, what prompted you then to start the foundation yourself, along with the 3 other members, as you mentioned, and then perhaps Emil can also just come in and speak to us about what prompted him to start what him and his father started, and then just link up the 2 foundations.
Yes, can I defer to Arun?
Yes,
Because
if
he's really the one.
if he is on the line
He
with
got
us.
he got the ball rolling.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Arun bhai, Assalamualaikum.
he's joined us on the line.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having us on your radio program, and assalamu alaikum and greetings to all your listeners.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes.
We just wanted to also, I mean, we opened up the discussion, but I'm also quite interested to know in terms of the founding of the South African Tilawa Foundation, and you were a key role player.
Yes, this story goes back some 25 years ago as to when we started with this thing here. It all happened by coincidence that all this happened. Is that, I was sympathizing with a friend of mine about the loss of his father. And I said to him, in our way, we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Unto him we belong, and unto him is our return. Because my father survived 2 nights and 2 days on a raft. And it wasn't his time to pass away, but his younger brother passed away. So I was, consoling him in that way. And he said to me, but which ship was it? And I said to him, it was the S.S Tilawa. So he said, but my father-in-law was involved in the operation. So from there, everything triggered. So he brought me a whole lot of pictures and, all the information, because we met his father-in-law as well. And since then, we had the Sunday Times article in 2001. And from there, I got the passenger list. And then from there, Ashraf and Imran, and we all got together, and we've been doing this work all the time.
Wow.
So, I mean, for us, it's been this thing, the culmination of what's happening as such. It's, the collaboration with Emil and his father and them. They've really taken this on a much higher level. And I feel so good that, at least we've helped them to trigger to that, to the stage that they've taken it on, So, I'm very, very happy that we've achieved this much.
Alhamdulillah. And so that sort of set the ball rolling for the South African Tilawa Foundation. And I mean, 25 years later.
Yes. So yes, I mean, sometimes I think to myself that we should actually close our eyes and just ponder that, for 48 hours, they were lucky for them, they had moonlight that evening, those couple of evenings. And what happened was that if you can just try to picture being on a raft or on a lifeboat, or don't know if someone is going to be there to rescue you, you're out there, and what kind of thoughts go through your mind. But I mean, alhamdulillah, they came through. Some didn't get through. And we just we pray for them, and we say that, it is what Allah wills. But this is where we go from.
Yeah. It's an incredibly difficult thing, I would imagine, to transport one to a space like that. I mean, it's dark, it's in the middle of the ocean, one feels incredibly vulnerable and incredibly helpless. And it doesn't mean that it happened so many decades ago, that the trauma associated, as Brother Ashraf was pointing out now, in somebody of 90 years old still feels jolted when she recollects or tries to recollect what transpired on that particular night. And yes, really, it's incredibly important that we do speak about this, that we have these conversations, and that it's remembered and commemorated. And exactly because now, I mean, as Brother Ashraf is pointing out, the question marks around the why that this this particular ship was even torpedoed.
Absolutely.
Well,
this.
So you go first, Arun.
Please step in.
No, it's okay, fine, Ashraf. You can answer that one.
No. Well, the thing is, we, Arun and I and Imran and Emil, we discovered lately, we've been working on this for a number of years, and we got traction to a point, but up until today, I mean, the very people who run this radio station, when I brought this tragedy to their attention, they said, "But we've never heard of this before."
Same.
But a lot of people have now started hearing about it and have started showing interest in this story, simply because there's money involved now. There's 60 tons of silver bullion that the South African government is trying to recover, which the salvages are refusing to return. In fact, South Africa tried to litigate twice in the Admiralty Court and lost on both occasions. I think it was always going to be a hapless venture. The British are not in the habit of returning what they take. It was never going to happen. But just the manner in that the way the silver bullion was salvaged, it was done clandestinely and transported in baskets under ocean in international waters before they got to British waters. So where I'm going with this is that there was a lot of, in the early days, there was a lot of speculation that the Japanese were after the silver bullion. In fact, people thought it was gold bullion. It's actually silver bullion on board the ship. There was a radio communication between, and this has been recorded. There was radio communication between the Japanese I-boat commander and Captain Robertson, the Tilawa, the captain of S.S Tilawa, and it was rumored at the time that the Japanese wanted to commandeer the ship, and it was always argued it was because they were after the silver bullion. But subsequently, we've discovered that there were ranking military personnel on board the ship. There was also military equipment on board the ship. People have anecdotally said that people have told them that there's jeeps and other military equipment on board the ship. So perhaps the Japanese were not after the silver bullion. Perhaps the ship was being used in the war effort and
categorized as a passenger ship. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the passengers were not given an opportunity to make an election to say, well, I'm not getting on board the ship because it's actually being used as a merchant cruiser and not as a passenger liner.
Yeah, so from that point, absolutely, the passengers were deceived.
Absolutely. And you have to ask who all is complicit in this, because even the Indian government, it was certainly the putative Indian government at the time, because the British were still very much in control of India at the time. They passed legislation allowing these passenger ships to be used in the war effort. So, between the then Indian government and the British and perhaps the Japanese has been silent on this. At least with the British, we've got some stuff out of them, mostly out of the museums, to explain some of what happened on that particular evening.
Wow.
But the Japanese have been dead quiet. I know Arun has written to them a few times. They've never had a response at all. I tried to get information from Lloyd's of London. I asked them, can they send me details of the insurance payout, because there's record of an insurance payout by Lloyd's of London. 8 decades later, they're still hiding behind client confidentiality. They tell me, no, they can't give me that information, client confidentiality. The ship owners don't exist in their current form, and yet they're hiding behind client confidentiality. So there's just been so much lack of transparency.
Yeah, the very silence of certain parties makes one realize that the plot is a lot thicker than it seems, and it also, I suppose, points in the direction that this goes a lot higher up than one would initially have thought about, given the fact that, as Ashraf pointed out right at the start, it was categorized as a passenger ship, and so from that point alone, I would imagine if one has had, well, in your case, when it was close family members that passed away as a result of this. But the reality is that these passengers were absolutely deceived. They got onto that ship in all innocence, not realizing that there were possibly clandestine activities taking place.
In fact, in one of the Emil, and you can just verify this. I think your dad was told that your grandfather never believed that a passenger liner could ever be torpedoed, could ever become fair game in the war effort. Am I correct, Emil? I read somewhere in one of your articles. Didn't your grandfather recollect that he was told that the passenger liners are never attacked would never be attacked
in a war
by the
situation?
Yeah, I that personally doesn't ring a bell to me, Ashraf. But what we have come to learn recently is that, you know, drills were done at that time to prepare passengers for an attack. In fact, I do believe that Mr. Junil Al-Nosaria, one of the survivors, mentioned something to that effect. And, you know, by the point of Tilawa leaving for its final voyage during the Second World War, 3 years before the end of the war and 5 years before the end of British rule, it had become common practice for passengers to go on merchant ships. Indeed, in 1941, Tilawa had been escorted by HMS Cornwall, and SS Carthage and HMS Birmingham were routinely doing escorts and also patrolling the waters for German U-boats and Japanese submarines. And so, you know, similar to what Ashraf is mentioning, the questions that we have are, you know, why were passengers allowed to go on a merchant liner, especially if it was contributing to a war effort? Why was there no patrol of waters during that time? Because I believe that Carthage and Birmingham had already left the door to before Tilawa on its way to East Africa from the Indian Ocean. So, you know, for us, when you line all of these things up, it just does not make sense.
Yeah, too many questions that remain. And I mean, I'm looking at your website. I want to also pick up on quite a few of the points that were raised by yourself. We're speaking about the Tilawa 80th commemoration. We have Emil Solanki, Ashraf Romani, and Harun Ata Muhammad, and they're talking us through quite a disturbing event. I mean, it's quite a fascinating story, but it is actually quite disturbing. An event that transpired in 1942 when the Tilawa, S.S Tilawa, when what was categorized as a passenger ship mysteriously, and I'm reading from the website now, mysteriously met its demise at the hands of a Japanese submarine. Curiously, the ship's main cargo, some 60 tons of silver bullion salvaged in 2017, is now currently the subject of a tug of war between the salvage company and the South African government. Now, I just also want to briefly read some of the objectives of the SS, of the Tilawa Foundation, and I would invite any one of the gentlemen to then pick up on these, and then also, of course, take us towards the commemoration. Now, as and I think it was Brother Ashraf that pointed out that now all of a sudden this is getting some center stage, this whole incident, because now there's a lot of money involved, and as I mentioned, now this tug of war. But the initial or the objectives of the Tilawa Foundation, that's now in around 25 years old, is firstly to spread awareness, inform others about this otherwise overlooked tragic piece of history. And I mean, I can absolutely attest to that. I was quite ignorant of this event. Then also to create a comprehensive passenger list so that those who have lost their lives may be found, to establish the true ownership of the ship's cargo and its relevance to the event, to record and retell any stories that relate to this tragedy, to recognize and respectfully mourn those lost at sea on this day, to reflect on the impact this tragic event had on the families of the survivors, families of those who perished. Now, of course, these objectives are aligned with the humanity and the humane part of this this event. And as you said earlier on, that now it's become about money, and also in view of what between yourselves, what you've uncovered is understanding that there may have been something a lot more clandestine at play when this event occurred in 1942.
Perhaps I can just come in. The establishing of the passenger list for me has been the first important piece of information that we've gathered, because we have a full, I would say 98% correct passenger list, which is a passenger list was sent to the Transvaal Indian Congress. I don't know by who, but when they seen the article in the Sunday Times in 2001, they called me and they said, we did not know what this was about, but now that we've seen your article, we have this list with us, and they gave it to me, and they said, this is for you. So I have the comprehensive passenger list, of who survived and who didn't survive. So that is on our website, and it's for all to go and look at, because you'll be surprised. So many people's names are there. I mean, I have a friend, Faisal Motlekar, whom I asked. I said, I see there's a Motlekar family person on this list here, and he checked and he found out that it was one of his relatives that was on the ship. So like that, there's several people that will find that they were family members on that.
And it must have been quite a painstaking process putting this together. Yes, for any of our listeners that would like to have a look at this, all of this is on the website. And so you can find the official passenger list on the source material. I'm looking at it right now, and yes, I realize all of this painstakingly put together. I mean, we're talking about it's a good few years ago.
Yes. And that passenger list is dated the 31st of December 1942. That's when the Transvaal Indian Congress had it. And they didn't know who it belonged to. I'm sure because, time had passed, and this whole story had got forgotten. And in 2001, which was about 60 years later, we were actually inquiring about it, and alhamdulillah, we managed to get the list. So that answers the question on that issue.
Yeah, and that of course, in terms of the one objective, as is noted on the website. Emil, would you like to come in there, perhaps? Emil?
Yes, you can throw any questions to me, and I'd be happy to answer them.
No, but I mean, any comments thus far on what we've outlined in terms of objectives? I realize that people like yourselves have spent so much time, and as I said, it's such a painstaking process putting this together. And of course, as all of you pointed out, met with a degree of frustration also at times, knowing that there's not answers to everything. And so exactly, given the fact that we have limited time, I would ideally, anything that you would want to highlight, even in terms of the commemoration.
Yes. Yeah, sure. So perhaps I can take this opportunity to give our connection to the story. Really appreciated Ashraf and Haroon's comments. They're fine gentlemen. Back in 2007, my father was sitting with my grandfather in Leicester, England. Just for your listeners, we are Gujarati Indians from Navsari, Gujarat. I was born and raised in England. A lot of the Gujaratis, after Idi Amin kicked them out from Uganda in the 60s, ended up in Leicester. And so anyhow, my father sees this old black and white picture, and he asks my grandfather, "Oh, who's that fellow?" And my grandfather says, "That's my father." And of course, my father's thinking, that cannot be possible, because I know who my grandparents are. And my father says to my dad, "No, that's my uncle. He raised me, and he took good care of me when my dad died during a ship sinking attack." And it was believed that there was precious metals at that time. Some had also said that there was gold on that ship. But 2007, was a pivotal year for us because we had this identity crisis in our family of this man, Nichabai Chibabai Solanki, who had a family. He had a wife, and he, with his first cousin, Devji Baga, went on Tilawa. His first cousin survived, by the way, and my great grandfather drowned, and my family waited a month for him to come back, and he never did, unfortunately. But fortunately, he left one child behind, a 9-year-old boy. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So then my father was able to, thanks to the S.S Tilawa Foundation, was able to see on their website the passenger list with Michabai Chibabai Solanki's name on it. Wow. And that was goosebumps. That was like a mental earthquake moment for our family. And so we then decided that outside of South Africa, because we have the British connection, we have the Indian connection. I now live in Canada with my wife and son. So we felt that, you know, we should set up a website. So I'm the founder of Tilawa1942.com. And the purpose of Tilawa1942.com is to be a comprehensive encyclopedia on different angles and perspectives, to share the many stories of the victims, either survivors or those who sunk, like my great-grandfather, and to go above and beyond in ensuring that Tilawa no longer becomes a forgotten tragedy. And so we felt, my father and I, that we should host the commemoration, the first ever commemoration of the S.S Tilawa on the 80th anniversary, and to officially memorialize the loss of 280 lives. And we thought, you know, should we do it in England? Should we do it in South Africa? Should we do it in India? And we decided that it should be at the iconic Grand Hotel in the Ballard Estate in Mumbai, South Mumbai, that is, in India, because Tilawa last left the Ballard Estate on November 20th, and the 678 survivors, thanks to HMS Birmingham and SS Carthage, were brought back to the Ballard Estate. And then, of course, in the Bombay area, many of the survivors were brought to the hospitals. And, you know, since our website has started to attract more of an online presence through social media, and our radio interviews and newspaper articles in India and in the UK, we've had many families also approach us and tell us their story. Indeed, we have one family, for instance, the Patel family, that said, thanks to our website, it is now telling them the story and it's helping them seek some closure. And it was so important for them. They made all the effort to get their Indian visas and to come for a couple of days all the way to India for the commemoration. Just yesterday, I had a radio interview here in Mumbai. I had a press conference that I held in the afternoon. We're expecting over 100 guests. The British deputy, His Majesty's British Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Alan Gemmell, will be our chief guest of the event. There'll be some Bollywood celebrities there too, Mr. Johnny Lever, for instance, who's accepted our invitation. We have several high-ranking chief of staff from the Indian Navy that will be attending as well, Commodore Koshi and the Vice Admiral Rao, just to name a few. So, you know, we feel that Tilawa 1942, The Forgotten Tragedy, in order for it to get the same attention and prominence of, you know, Pearl Harbor or, you know, Winston Churchill, Nazi Germany, Lusitania, Titanic, if it's going to have that type of relevance and prominence, the next generation, I'm 35 years old, the next generation really need to take a responsibility of preserving that heritage and history and carrying it forward. And I do believe that there is a book to be written, a documentary to be made, even a film that connects India, South Africa and Britain. And just, my thoughts on the salvage itself. We were watching with keen interest both the first hearing in 2020 and then the Court of Appeals earlier this year in I think it was in March of 2022. And then, it was unprecedented and complicated that they had to come back later this year, and the judgment just came out in October. And, the summary of the matter is that everybody acknowledges that the government of South Africa are the rightful owners of the 2,364 bars. Actually, there were 2,391, but only 2,364 were declared. So who knows what happened
what
to the
happens
other
with the others?
27. But there's a value of about $50 million US.
Wow.
And so everybody acknowledges that the Republic of South Africa are the rightful owners. The complication, though, is this. The government of South Africa were previously approached approximately in 2012 by, I think it was an American company called Odyssey. And they even came to an agreement that if Odyssey went through the time and the investment of millions of dollars to go out into the middle of the Indian Ocean, to go 3,500 meters deep, over 2 miles, to go and use robotics and subsea vessels to salvage the silver, that rightfully they should, be compensated for their efforts. And, because no one's going to do this for free.
Of course.
So South Africa didn't want to make the effort and the investment of time to do it themselves. And the silver's been sitting there all this time, and there was no secret as to the precious metals on the ship. But, Argentum Exploration, which was created by a well-known racing driver from England, Mr. Ross Hyatt, he may have been in his 60s at the time. But when they brought back the silver to the receiver of wreck in Southampton, England, that's when it triggered this legal situation. And the government of South Africa were twice trying to claim sovereign state immunity, meaning that they shouldn't have to pay for the labors of getting these silver bars. Exactly. And of course they lost at the Court of Appeals. And I understand now on good authority that they did appeal to the Supreme Court in the UK, and the appeal was denied. Not sure what that has done to the value of the silver, the currency exchange, or even negotiating powers of how much they should now pay Argentum. But where it was established that it was a merchant carrier, it was a commercial transaction, and it was going to be used for coinage. Indeed, 20% of the silver was meant to be used for Egyptian coinage. And so, based on the facts, they could not claim state immunity. They had to pay for the labor for someone to go and do the work. And, what I would say now is we need to kind of take the positives from this and try and make sure that we can further our research, because if we can further our research, if we can get access to classified documentation and information, if we can even see photographs and videos of the ship, I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, my grandfather, who I mentioned earlier, his final wish, it was very peculiar at the time, and he was quite adamant. In 2012, it's the last time I saw him, he said, find the location of the ship, find the location of my father's body. I want to know. And we just felt, yeah, well, that's a nice dream, but that's just not going to happen. And it did. In 2017, when they found the ship, for us, that was the resurrection of the story, because, our dear friends in South Africa, Mr. Tar Mohammed, Mr. Rumani, and Mr. Bobbert, they had taken this story as far as they could. They had done amazing research. They reached out to several families in South Africa, including Mr. Junilal Nosaria, who documented his experience quite well. And we felt, well, why don't we try to give it global exposure. And of course, we have a personal connection to the story too. So we hope that today, in a couple of hours, the 80th commemoration of the S.S Tilawa, which will be on YouTube. It will also be on Zoom. We'll be providing those details on our social media platforms, tilawa1942.com or Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Tilawa1942. In the next couple of hours, we will be releasing the link. And we hope that many around the world will be able to join us. The actual format of the program, it should be about 1 hour. So it will start at 6:30 Indian Standard Time. So we're in Mumbai. And there will be some comments from the Maritime Museum Society in India. It was because of their support that we were able to put this together, and we appreciate their fine efforts in their assistance and generosity of pro bono time. So they'll give some introductory comments. I'll have the keynote address, which will give an overview of the subject. We have a nice little video to show. We have some interviews of those that could not attend, including Mr. Haroon, and some other people. For instance, Mr. Mervyn Massiel, shout out to him, who is now age 93. He's living in South London, and he was 13 years old, living in Bombay as a teenager when he lost his mother, his father, and 3 of his siblings. They all drowned. And he lived just down the road from where I went to school and played cricket, and I only knew about him this year. And then also nearby my house in London, England, where I grew up, Mr. Arvind Baijani, the one of 2 known survivors. He's now 83. He is actually with us. He came all the way from South London with his wife, with his daughter, to be one of our special guests at the commemoration. His mother jumped into the last lifeboat, wrapped him in a sari, took that leap of faith. And because of what she did, there's now like another 40 odd people in their family that have come into existence because of what she did for him. So, you know, we are just very grateful that we have this collaboration with our friends in South Africa. We're very grateful of your interest on your radio station. And I think what we would request, please, from the kindness of our heart, with all humility, is continue to share the story as we get new developments. Let's, you know, share it. Let's give it the airtime that it deserves. And also, if there are other friends or family or acquaintances that are connected to the tragedy in some way, go to one of the websites, sstilawa.com or tilawa1942.com, see the passenger list, share the passenger list, and see if there are any other families that we can help receive some closure.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Emil. But I want to ask Brother Ashraf and Brother Haroon, perhaps just in our last few 3-4 minutes, maybe just a minute or two, each of you, to just, you know, send your message out there also in terms of, yes, certainly telling us and our listeners, you know, about the story. I mean, as I said, that many of us are so ignorant of or unaware of.
For me, I just want to sign off by saying that, both our website and Emil's website, we have a common objective, really, and that's just to get some answers, just to be able to tell people who we love, who asked us to look into this, what exactly happened on that fateful morning. And the only way we can get to do that is to encourage you to encourage the listeners to visit our website. And as Aaron said, particularly go through the passenger list, because if you recognize anybody on that passenger list, both those who perished and those who survived, you may know somebody in your family or in your circle of friends who has material that we can put on our website, or even anecdotal information that we can share, what appears now globally.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've got both the websites open in front of me, and while one realizes that, of course, there are many other burning questions
We'll get some
insofar.
answers, and many
burning questions insofar as exactly what transpired. I mean, why the whys and the all of those, and what transpired between the governments and what was the communication there. But there's the emphasis being on the very humane aspect of this, that yes, these were loved ones, relatives and close ones that passed away or that were injured in some way or the other. Brother Harun, we have about a minute left. Perhaps in closing, your comments, please.
We wish to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our story with you. What we'd like to do is, there might be some elder people that might not be able to go onto the websites and things like that. And if they want to, they are welcome to contact myself.
Yeah.
Or any one of the gentlemen, locally in South Africa or wherever, they can contact us. If you wish, you can share my information, or you can put it onto your website. If people want to call us directly, they're welcome to call us directly. Our phone numbers are perhaps not on the website, so if they, some of the people are not familiar with sending emails, so that's the reason why I'm offering to put my telephone number forward. Because a lot of people are seniors who might have experience in this particular tragedy.
No, of course, what we perhaps can do is we can leave those numbers then with reception, and then anybody who is interested or anybody who wants to share, then they can contact directly that side. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing what is indeed a fascinating story, even if it is quite disturbing, and knowing the fact that that this transpired, and it's such a historic event, and that it hasn't quite gotten the airtime. But I wish you all success with the commemoration, and so go well, and may you achieve what you want to, and meet all the objectives that you've set out. Emil, Ashraf and Harun, go well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you so much. God bless you all.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. That was Emil Solanke, Ashraf Rumani and Harun Ta Muhammad speaking to us about the Tilawa 80th commemoration. A quick reminder that the websites are tilawa1942.com and the other one is ssistilawa.com. Go to those websites for all the information that, a lot more than what our guests have just shared.
This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.